Kentucky governor will be laid to rest tomorrow. Today, Governor Brereton Jones is lying in state at the Capitol in Frankfort.
WKYT's Phil Pendleton has more on the services to remember him.
A Kentucky State Police Honor Guard is keeping vigil over the casket in the Kentucky State Capitol Rotunda. They will be there until 7 o'clock tonight. We are told the family of Governor Jones will be here today at 3 o'clock. Now, Jones passed away September 18th at the age of 84 at his home after a lengthy illness. He had served as governor from 1991 to 1995. Jones moved to Kentucky from his home state of West Virginia to focus on the thoroughbred racehorse business and industry. As governor, he's remembered for pushing progressive reforms and programs. He is also well known for meeting with people one-on-one, both during the campaign and as governor, starting the Open Door After 4 program to meet with Kentuckians, and was known to sometimes not leave until the wee hours of the morning to meet with as many people as possible. He's also known for pushing both ethics and campaign finance reform laws and leaving the state with a surplus budget after it had a deficit when he was sworn in. And Governor Jones' funeral service will be at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning at the Elkhorn Baptist Church in Midway, followed by a private burial. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
And Jones's family is asking that donations be sent to Racetrack Chaplaincy of America, Bluegrass Care Navigators, or Old Friends Thoroughbred Retirement Farm.